Give me a throw.
Welcome back to the Proving Grounds. We are now in Game 2 going forward. A phenomenal victory by Dignitas Academy to start off this series. And man, what a dominant performance from this team.
That was a beautiful performance, Cage, because every single lane of Dignitas had a standout moment, from Will's early game and being able to track exactly where Anda was going, Lorlo dealing with that matchup with the Shen and Camille, Viper very proficient in that, Camille handling that so well, the mid lane with Sligo, everything was fine-tuned for Dignitas.
All right, so as a top lane aficionado myself, I personally loved seeing the Shen Camille matchup. I play it all the time, and I think it works really well considering how well Shen scales into it. But it's want to be noted that, like you were saying before, my prediction as of right now here is still kind of safe. I did say that he went for Immortals, but going back to your point, bro, Dignitas looked absolutely phenomenal. We're talking about the during the game as well. It just seemed as though they had Immortals' number at every single thing they did. They could not escape the grasp that was Dignitas Academy.
Yeah, they absolutely could not, and you really got to start pinpointing at the moments where this started to go so firmly in the hands of Dignitas. In the early game, Mortals were doing a lot of plays to get those early kills, to try and set up early success in any lane they really could. What you saw was Will tracked exactly where Anda was going to be and responded with the better play each and every time. Pre-10 minutes, you saw 2 plays come out of Immortals. The responses out of Dignitas were brilliant, and that's what led us to get deeper and deeper into this game. Immortals didn't seem like they were on the same page where they were trying to place their resources, where they were trying to place their players on the map. Because he had situations where, like, sure, Immortals dedicated 4 top, they took down Lorlo over in the top lane, okay, but Spawn is down in the bot lane free farming and grabbing plates. That is one thing I really, really want to point out. 24 minutes in, Spawn had a 50 CS lead over Keith and a scoreline of 5-1-5. Spawn got to free farm to get to that late game stage to make himself look like a stud, to make sure all that hard work Lorlo and Will put in paid off.
And that's what we were talking about before too. We were saying how, like, both between Immortals and also with Dignitas, like, were they going to play a much more bot-centric type of champion style, Were they going to be able to put a lot of resources into Keith, into Spawn? No, they go back to what they were doing before, so Dignitas naturally matches them. They go for a lot more topside plays, and yeah, letting a Jinx free farm is one thing that you don't want to happen. It is, what I like to say, the opposite of bueno. So when you get into those mid-game team fights, like, suddenly you see Spawn is, like, absolutely popping off, deals disgusting amounts of damages, and up, especially if it's a team of Immortals who don't have that many resistances, a Jinx who's able to get excited, one might say, and just get off more of those passives and immediately tear apart the team, suddenly becomes very dangerous.
Okay, but I gotta ask, if you say that's the opposite of bueno, how do we get to the level of bueno for Immortals Academy if we're talking about Game 2? Because honestly, this is going to be so difficult for them, seeing how Dignitas performed.
One lane I think we all have to agree on is going to be the mid lane with Pretty. Pretty, he didn't have the biggest of performances in that one, just because overall it was a rough game for Immortals in every single lane. We did say that every lane of Dignitas did perform. He ends with a scoreline of 1-0-4, has very good CS, was able to get the up onto his counterpart. So Pretty is a good place to play off of if you do want to start finding success here. He was safe and he did provide some team play.
I couldn't agree with you more. Give him something that can roam. Don't landlock him to mid lane, just being stuck in Orianna versus Syndra. As fun as that is, and like, it is a very skill intensive matchup, bro. Put on something like, if you can, Arise or LeBlanc, something that might, like, allow him to affect the map on a much deeper level, because, like, you saw those weren't banned out against him, and especially if you have to match was Lee Sin, that has to happen.
And Ravish, that's where I was about to get to right there. Lee Sin, very first pick to come out of Dignitas, trusting that in the hands of Will for good reason. He is a spectacular Lee Sin, and that's where I'm hoping the draft does take a change if Immortals do want to take a victory there. We know Anda's a pretty proficient Lee Sin as well. He's a very aggressive jungler. Usually his aggression amounts to kills. Lee Sin works well with that. I would like to see it either banned away or taken by Immortals if they want to get a W.
It's going to be a really tough match, though. You have to think this is a best of 5, and both of these teams have seen what happened Game 1. Does Immortals try right out the gate to get those Lee Sin picks? Are they trying for blue side, or is there some other grander strategy that they should go for moving forward in this series?
It's really hard to say off of that game because in that game it was tough to find the strong points for Immortals. One of the only points where we saw Immortals kind of get a lead was a team fight towards the bot side jungle over by Red Buff, but a lot of that was because Lorlo was by himself for a good 10 to 12 seconds in that fight. I do feel the right way to go is to keep Keith on something like the Aphelios, something that can scale, or even the Varus, if you can get him on something like that, that can get a lot of that chip damage in quite early, and set up these plays for players like Anda and Pretty, as well as Viper, of course, with the very aggressive champion pull he takes.
Actually, you know what? I'm actually gonna go one up you on that here, Dustros. Give him Ziggs. Just like if you are to just like if you're gonna lead people to just farm, just put this something that and the more farm they get, the more dangerous they become. I always say that Ziggs is definitely an immediate win con for any team that does have it. So if you just leave them by himself, just chill, you farm up, and you'll be deal disgusting amounts of damage throughout the rest of the game. Plus, makes the game a little bit more interesting. But if I ever look at Immortals across the board right now, yes, it's like consider they're on red side going into this game number 2. They must have chosen it for a reason. The winner for go with the first pick. So I'm assuming they'll likely ban out Lee Sin, or hear me out, they might go for the Xin Zhao matchup here. I know it's become a lot more popular. At least it would give on a little bit more agency and going for 1v1s early on. Or hey, make things fun, just bring out Kha'Zix, and then everybody can have a good time. But I'm just going to dream here personally.
I mean, they did ban the Lee Sin on red side, banned the Xin Zhao on the red side and left Lee Sin open. Leave them both open. Go ahead and gamble with it. Why not? Grab that Xin Zhao, man. Grab that Xin Zhao.
We definitely do want to see fighting fire with fire, but I have to ask, after this game 1, we've seen what the teams think, but what do the analysts think? Are we changing up our predictions here? Are we still saying the 3-0 and the 3-1? Are we feeling the Immortals, Ravish? That's really what I'm asking here.
Well, of course, bro. I said 3-1. I'm sticking with 3-1. Immortals still got it here, baby. It's like rough game 1 for sure, but I think a lot to learn. What I just to echo my points before, a cohesive composition. One that's on the same page at what it wants to do, right? Because even picking the Oriana before for Immortals, there's no real ball delivery systems except on Viper. So if you're about to pick the Oriana, then go in and go full force on it too. Play it together, that's fine. Ultimate base type compositions I find work really well if you play more so for that mid game, and your early game can be a little bit back and forth. You don't have to control every single point across the entire map as long as you're together and you're friends, because that's how we get wins, right? Friendship.
Power of friendship.
Look it up.
That's my opinion, though.
No, I completely agree with you. It does come down to the synergy of the teams. And now that we're going into this game 2 very soon, we're having just a little bit of delay, but we will be in Champ Select. I promise you. We got to think about what is going to come up. Are we going to see any surprises here? Is there anything left in the trick, up in the hat, I should say? Some trick, some rabbit that we can just pull out coming in from Immortals, or will Dignitas just steamroll this?
I mean, I'm going to say Akshan. Ravish is going to say Riven.
Yep.
Pretty much the discussion right there. Everyone wants to see a Viper Riven. Everyone gets excited when you see it. Lorlo pulled out the Akshan, and it looked great. I was happy seeing that new champion, especially in a veteran like him, having it in his hands and what he was able to do with it in the top side.
Bro, Viper, good. Riven, good. Riven, Viper together, good. I think that's the whole argument, bro. Y'all see that? Y'all see about that game yesterday around that Baron fight? The way he's bobbing, weaving back and forth. He got off, I think, 3 gore drinkers during that? Yeah. Just immediately got back half his health every single time. Stayed alive somehow when he had 3 people focusing him, chasing him down, and didn't die. That's kind of all the argument I need to make, bro.
Yeah, he's absolutely insane, man. It throws me back to spring 2020, opening day of LCS, when he was on FlyQuest. He gets 8 kills to his name, not a single death. The Riven is a pick that gets commonly banned against him for a reason. Of course, there are going to be appropriate times to take it. Immortals not filling that, at least in the game number 1, because it wasn't banned away, but we'll see. We'll see if we get that pocket pick coming up, because I would be excited to see it for sure.
I have an idea. I think if Dig want to break brain this, bro, I think they just bait they bait Immortals into just taking the pick. They let Viper have the Riven, and they put Lorlo on Malphite. This is look, bro, this is such a good tech where y'all don't even know about this. I played this matchup a lot. In fact, a friend of ours, Dean Rebel Fox Merrick, I've in fact dunked on him top lane 1v1 with this. You just take Comet Malphite, you poke her out of lane, and with the armor stacking, you just do so well into this Riven. It is actually free. And we know Lorlo has a pretty deep champion pool. He can play these unorthodox picks, and he's wonderful at weak side. Let him be strong side big. Play towards him, bro. Gank for your Malphite, please.
We are getting very close to ready, folks, but Malphite, could very well happen, I guess. There is a world in which that could happen. Akshan, though, I gotta feel like he just hasn't really been showing up a whole lot, and I still don't think it's gonna happen like this series.
Come on. He pulled it out in the FlyQuest game. 6-1-2, 8.0 KDA on that sucker. It looks solid. He did it into a chase matchup. I want to see it. Lorlo, come on, man.
Yo, can I just say, Akshan is such a disgustingly broken champion. It's like he has literal game-breaking abilities that baffle me. What do you mean you get to respawn? What do you mean death timers aren't a thing if you do well? If you have someone who can carry it, it's like, bro, if you suddenly just bring back a top laner and he has TP, that 4v3, that early pick means nothing. Nothing at all.
Ravish, it sounds like you're jealous that your top laner is not an Akshan player over on the side that you voted for.
I'm the top laner.
yeah, you're the top laner.
But maybe just a little bit. All right, look, bro, champions are good, but it doesn't matter. We don't need Akshan. We have Riven. Riven good. All right, look, it's like you have low cooldowns. You can Q 3 times, stun, shield. What more do you need? I don't need to bring my champions back. I don't need to bring back my teammates. Viper 1v5s it. Viper 1v10s this.
Well, I'm glad you don't need that back, because you know what I need back is some League of Legends. We are in for Game 2. Champ Select coming up. Take it away, Tigris and Joshi.
Let's go. Game number 2 underway. Dignitas Academy versus Immortals Academy. Joshi, I feel like we got the blood pumping so hard in game number 1, and I'm so ready to keep it going.
I know, it started off super spicy, right? We saw Trundle run from red buff all the way to bot lane and didn't even take any of the other camps on the way. So I'm kind of curious, what else Immortals are kind of looking to do to upset the balance of power. Because I know, somebody I talked to a fair amount, CLG's Miko, talks a lot about how if you're going to bring out a cheese strat, it's usually going to be in game 2. So now's the time for Immortals and Jensen Go to see if they have some good idea what it is they need to do to change.
Keeping the red side this time too, so maybe some opportunity to switch things up, a surprise counter. But in terms of what happened last game, mentioning how things kicked off with Anda attempting to make that play towards bot, you have to appreciate that proactivity, even if it ended up getting pushed on them a bit. So we've known him to have a lot of strength when on picks with agency. That can make those early plays happen, and perhaps gonna kind of stick in that category. No change though, technically difference in the order that the bans came in, but the Aurelia taken away, Ziggs taken away game 1, taken away game 2. I know the desk talked a lot about what he can offer in the game, but I think that both of these teams have a thorough understanding as well, and that's why they don't want to see it.
The Lee Sin already taken off from Will, so that is going to be the first change. We're not going to be fully running it back in a salty fashion. We are going to be having opportunities to see new things coming through. I know the desk was talking a little bit about bringing out something like Xin Zhao for Will, but he's got a lot of different things in his champion pool, and we know that he's very good at a lot of these bruisers. With the Braum taken off, Immortals just feel like, Dignitas, you're going to have to come up with something pretty new. You're going to have to surprise us a little bit. And Varus, something we know Spawn is very good at, something that has a lot of build paths. You can build lethality, you can build on hit. You can even go with some crazy crit or AP builds these days.
Oh yeah, it's been quite the sight to see. A lot of displays coming out, just a lot of versatility in what you want him to offer to the team, and having that as their first lock in. The response is Immortals deciding to go and lock their bot lane in once again. It's the same one we saw in game 1, Aphelios plus Thresh to bring into Dignitas.
it is a little bit more vulnerable to the Varus than it is to the Jinx, right? The Varus can go with lethality and just hit Aphelios from a longer range than Aphelios can really deal with, but it also is going to mean that you need to create some tools to actually protect this Varus later on. At this point, they got to make sure that they also have things that they can attack. They have some initiation tools already, so Dignitas coming up with something very different, but Immortals looking like they just want to stick to their guns so far.
Yeah, and speaking of that difference, Dignitas locking in the Viego here. We've seen less Viego since he underwent those nerfs within recent patches, but is still somebody that teams are prioritizing as somebody that can affect the team fight because of his mechanics. If you have somebody that is very comfortable on the pick like Will, then you can still make him work in these scenarios. And Dignitas have time and time again been working towards what Will brings to the table, working around his picks and his strengths mechanically. And then on the other side, you get in that Camille locked in, Viper wanting to run that one back. And when JJ's not on the Braum, he has often went to the Alistar in previous series.
I really like right now that Dignitas Academy have picked 3 brand new champions for this series, whereas Immortals have picked the exact same 3 champions from their first game. And so they just want to kind of run it into everything. At this point, I would be expecting a Gnar ban coming through, take Lorlo off of that, because even though it can be dived by Camille plus whatever jungler Anda wants to play, it also is just in an isolated situation, has a pretty good matchup into the Camille. So Immortals going to be playing a very similar style right now, and the big thing that I criticized them for last game was, 1, they didn't have a ton of control over when fights started, and 2, we realized this a bit more later on, they actually didn't have a dive buddy for Viper. It was very difficult for them to go and actually try and attack the immobile AD carry, and it looks like that's probably going to be the game plan again.
And oftentimes, when you see a team coming off of the loss in a game, still running back the same composition, it means that afterwards they're saying, oh, we felt good about what we brought. Maybe there were some failed executions in some parts, some ways we can change around that. And with Dig switching up so much, when a lot of the trouble was having JJ, having Lorlo on the Braum and the Shen to be able to counter anytime there was an engage thrown out and just really protect someone like Jinx as that carry. So perhaps this time around, Immortals facing off against a different composition, feeling a bit better about how they can execute. All bans, all locked in. We're into the next phase of picks here, Joshi.
We are, and we see the Jarvan come through. This was banned last time by Dignitas Academy, so suddenly the Camille and Jarvan dive buddies, you lock people down really, really effectively, and I wouldn't be surprised, I'd be a little surprised if it was followed up by a Galio, but it is such a classic combination of champions, Galio, Jarvan, Galio, Camille, always very strong, makes it very difficult for Spawn to really play, but they're also leaving up this Gnar, so Lorlo going right for it, and Azir going over to Sligo. This guy has plenty of mages, and there are so many tools right now to keep Dignitas backline alive, but the big thing is both Camille and Jarvan have ways to dodge a lot of this crowd control with their ultimates.
They're gonna have to do some dodging though, all right. I mean, Lorlo on this Gnar feeling mighty comfortable throughout the regular season, 13 games played, and Soligo also having the Azir as a go-to, somebody that can really separate and disrupt a fight. Also, when you have that TP, can just come down and really affect one of these other lanes. But Immortals also able to do the same with that change going towards that J4. As you're saying, Joshi, Camille can suddenly turn that 1v1 into a 1v2 with her lockdown when she has somebody able to join her in that fight. But what do you make of the changes from Dig, considering they felt pretty comfortable on some of the picks, but were again disrupted by the Lee Sin and the Braum being banned away this time?
I really like this composition coming out from Dignitas right now. I feel like they have a lot of tools in order to keep their backline alive with the Alistar, the Azir, the Varus, and even the Gnar. And then the Viego's kind of tacked on. But the reason why I like the Viego is we turn our eyes to the other side of the table, where Immortals Academy currently have what I like to call a threat overload. You have 3 people are going to be diving, and if any of them end up falling, suddenly that threat is now on the Dignitas side. You just possess them as well, the Viego takes them over, and you turn it right around. And so Immortals are creating a lot of space for Aphelios to be free hitting. It's also very high variance if any of them end up falling.
Pretty Zblanc.
Oh, it's pretty scary.
Pretty lethal in some past VODs if you go ahead and check him out. I mean, he's been one of the most talked about players, I would say, throughout the split because of his consistency within that mid lane position. So I know a lot are very excited to see him come through. Tips NA prospects, for instance, noting Pretty and what he's been able to bring to Immortals here. But game number 2 kicked off. Joshi, Dignitas, Immortals here in the lower bracket, wanting to keep their run alive.
This is very interesting right now. Notice where Soligo is, and he's dancing. You know he's paying attention to if anybody comes out of this spot, but nobody's going to be revealing themselves just quite yet. They might get a ward over this blue buff, and Soligo will know about it, but it also feels like a very defensive spot from Soligo, right? They're not necessarily getting any proactive vision down, and they will be calling out that a ward does come through. So it will end up being a bit of a wash, but I'm a little bit surprised that that's all we saw in this early game. We just saw Lorlo walk up top lane, get a ward in his own brush. We saw this ward getting put on the blue buff, and then Soligo confident enough to walk out after and just be like, hey, anybody still here? Anybody still home? Nope. Okay, I'm going to throw down this ward and this pixel brush and peace out.
And Dignitas being the first ones to move forward as a pack in game number 1, this time moving a bit more defensively across as Immortals were looking for some potential warding setup. Got it a little deep into that jungle, and now everyone returning to lanes. We'll starting over on that bot side, and it's Anda on that top side.
And interestingly, we did see Anda start leashless once again on this red buff. He's not going for some kind of crazy cheese like he did on the Trundle. Instead, he's going to be farming up a little bit, going to be clearing 2 camps, skipping Krugs because they take forever as Jarvan, and going to be running towards the bot side of the map. But Will not be on the bottom side by the time Anda starts looking for these ganks. After he clears the Krugs, he's going to be heading towards the Raptors, heading towards the top side of the map. And so Anda trying to prey a little bit on the fact that he knows that Will is not starting blue buff, and therefore should be clearing bottom to top, and we'll be giving Anda a window to potentially look for a dive or a gank here in about 30 seconds.
Though a slight bit more patience compared to that game number 1. Obviously a different pick and just a different matchup entirely, but still choosing to pour some of those early resources intensity towards that bot side, though he is actually moving more towards mid into the enemy jungle, where Will has currently evacuated over on his wolves right now. So Anda on the backside of Soligo, but we'll just go ahead and escape.
And it does show on that spot. He actually does the red Raptors Gromp, right? So he does hit level 3, but it looks like he really wants to go for a fight once again. He's continuing to skip out on these camps, and it looks like he gets spotted. You see multiple pings going through. They know exactly where Anda is, and this gives Will a lot of freedom because he's holding all the cards, and Anda's going to be giving up a lot of time trying to make this work. Going to get spotted on this Ghost Poro if he walks over it, and wow, Will knows exactly where Anda has been this entire time, and it looks like Dignitas not going to be rotating as many people up, so Anda might be getting away with it.
It seems that Dig are just very wary of where Anda is in general, knowing that they want to snowball Pretty and get him to a place where he can just be extremely explosive and oppressive. So they prioritize so much trying to track him and make sure to match him as much as possible. JJ rotated up here to match Joey too. It's a scuttle that they're going for, and it's a scuttle that's secured by Dig with the smites.
A potentially very risky play coming in for Immortals, right? They bring everybody down there right at the same time. They want to pick up the scuttle and recoup a lot of the losses that Anda was picking up, not going for these crabs and not going for his own camps. And they barely get away with it, making sure they have just enough mobility. I was really worried when I saw Anda use his EQ over the wall, because suddenly Jarvan doesn't have anything else after that, but they have Joey already there, and they are able to get him out of dodge. So great play, great heads up from Immortals, being willing to use all these tools in order to just barely get out of all of these big plays that they're going for.
Yeah, and have that double scuttle, just some extra vision across the map. Still have a bit over 20 seconds before that first Drake spawns. But here in the top side, where so much of our interest has come to narratively, just between what Lorlo has provided for his team and Viper being a player that so many like to play around, and the Camille playing so aggressively, pushing forward, having this wave up. Now, Lorlo responding with some lockdown of his own as he is in Mega Gnar. But Viper feels much more secure being able to play in that way because of the warding that he has across that riverside. So no fear of Will coming to join that party.
Remember last time when we were looking towards the top lane as well, Gabby, we had Viper building up a 30 CS lead up against Lorelei. Now, admittedly, a big part of that came from the fact that Immortals were willing to dive him around the 7-minute mark last time, and he was able to really snowball that. But this time, Lorlo is already up to a bit of a CS lead, and we said that this was a good matchup for Gnar if left in isolation, and so far, they've been left in isolation. So if Lorlo can continue to build a small lead here, it will really upset one of the ways that Immortals was looking to win in Game 1.
And using that range to his advantage up over on the top side, and bringing our eyes just back towards where these supports are, because you can see those pings kind of going over towards bot. JJ has brought himself back towards that matchup. So it's currently the 2v2 and maybe calling for some attention from the jungler here as well, as the wave's been pushed up, but Keith and Joey look to be setting up around this river as well.
Cryo in the bottom lane, as we see a freeze coming through. Pretty goes aggressive in the mid lane. Likely shouldn't have anything come of this, but Pretty wants to find the fight.
Soligo gets locked on with the chains. There's the root, throws down some damage of his own, but the copy is good. So no lives lost just yet. A root onto spawn, though. Knock up onto Keith. Will has joined, throws down the Herald Mist, and does here too. See if he can get in with the QE combo, but everybody's just directly under the turret. The death sentence to follow up. The jungler's here to stay. That's first blood for Immortals. Spawn marked down so low, has to flash out, and luckily able to pop that bot and keep himself alive.
1-for-1 when all is said and done. But I really like the way that Immortals were playing that. They were playing very patiently this entire time, and eventually they break this freeze in the bottom lane. They make sure the minions actually crash. And as we take a look at this once again, remember that Aphelios, when he has Gravitum, when he has the Gravity Gun root, and just is able to set up for everybody else, becomes so much more dangerous as a pick tool. Easy burst of the Alistar, not able to flash out of it once the death sentence actually lands. And the only reason why this goes a bit awry is Spawn still saving that W for the extra damage on the piercing arrow, is able to kill Anda on the backside, but the game much closer now than it was last time around, as Viper going aggressive.
He's going for it. Gets some action, but it's actually the bot lane where we have to pay attention to the objective security from Immortals. They're targeting this, taking advantage of some of that pressure that they had allotted beforehand. Dignitas had been forced back, even though Spawn had survived. It takes him some time to get back to the Rift, but yeah, this is proving a lot more tight across the board, because we really only saw those kills down in the bot side, and willingness from Dig to trade that back and punish Anda for going a bit deep, but still feeling pretty good on both sides here, Joshi.
It is. It's still pretty even. I feel like Aphelios was going to scale a little bit better in a lot of these fights, but we also have to pay attention to the fact that Immortals are at a pretty severe wave clear and poke disadvantage going later on, because Varus with the lethality build is going to be able to pick up a lot of wave clear, will be able to do a lot of poke, and of course Azir very far range with his soldiers that he's able to interact with both the wave and in the champion set. So while the Keith in isolation is obviously going to be scaling very well, the question will be is how well is he actually going to be able to hit if the rest of Immortals aren't able to get some of these fights started in the way that they want to.
Taking a look at over on this top side where that Rift Herald has spawned, because as much as a threat as Aphelios is going to be, especially in the team fighting later, we do still have the top objective to worry about. That Anda looks like he's attempting to secure it right now, which would mean a dragon for themselves and that top side objective. Will is here to potentially respond. Pretty here dips over the wall, throws out the chains, but narrowly misses. The entirety of the bot lanes on both sides have brought themselves up towards this objective, but it's Immortals that gets towards it first. Lorlo has rotated on down. Viper is going to be soon to follow, but there goes down the Rift Herald. JJ going on in, gets a knockup. The blast out to the side by Anda. JJ in the center of them all, throws down the ultimatum from Viper. A nice hook onto Lorlo, flashes off to the outskirts on the side, and Will channeling so much damage into his own HP bar, and Lorlo, even with the healing coming up, cannot survive. Will ulting over the wall and flashes out to make sure he doesn't get hooked on in. Immortals looking very lethal, gunning for blood.
Yeah, we are seeing a pretty big difference. Remember, this was a fight that Dignitas opted into, but Gnar doesn't have a rage bar just quite yet, and Soligo is so far away, as is Varus. They run in. This is a 3v5. initially, and a little bit farther out, but by the time Soligo gets in, by the time that Spawn is actually able to start hitting, the fight is already over. Lorlo never had an opportunity to ult. They just have to run away. Joey, I mean, if this death sentence lands, it would have been a 3-for-0, but instead it's just a 2-for-0 and a Rift on. So it looks like Ravish's initial prediction looking a little bit better because they are firmly in the driver's seat right now. And the question is, how effectively are they going to be able to use this very small lead that they've actually picked up? They're moving Joey and Keith topside to try and crash this Herald.
I don't know, or you don't want to solidify any expectations, that's for sure. Even looking to the first time we saw these teams face off, and it was Immortals that grabbed a lot of control over that mid to late game, and it came down to a fight in which Dignitas were able to secure to make it that 2-0. They just pushing Keith back a little bit here. But I feel like, Joshi, talking to a lot of casters and those watching the scene, that so many are hype on Dignitas and how well they have been performing in previous series, not suffering a loss for quite some time until they faced off against Team Liquid. But Immortals also have been ramping up, and Anda even making note of what they've made of the experience and getting these games under their belt throughout the entirety of the bracket. Do you feel going into this that this is a pretty tight matchup between the two compared to maybe how it would have been even just a few weeks ago?
I definitely think that it has been pretty close, right? I said right after we watched Dignitas kind of clobber Immortals the first time around that I was expecting Dignitas to win, but I wasn't expecting them to win so convincingly. And a big part of that comes down to the fact that I feel like they just had a couple of better reads on how to play around the top side of the map. And right now, it feels like Immortals have kind of neutralized that a fair bit, even though, Lorlo does have a pretty significant lead. It is a good matchup in isolation, but it is a very tight matchup across the board. And Will, we know he's here.
Throws out the chain of corruption. Spawn wanted to get some kind of lockdown after the attempted plate from JJ, but they can't really follow up in the meantime. And Pretty going right back towards that mid lane. You see that 2v2 ready to be set up and rotate towards wherever the most action goes. And here, though,
he goes in.
Viper throws down the ultimatum, locks Lorlo in place. There's even a TP here for additional support. Lorlo doesn't have any rage available to him, so Pretty secures it. Feels good about that kill. And IMT continues to level up. They want that LeBlanc to get big, and bigger she's getting.
Look, I've said this a lot, Gabby. Gnar struggles with powerful women. Unfortunately, there are two of them in the lane at the same time. Camille just able to go for the dive. JJ again looking for a fight. Seeing the play on the opposite side, knows there's no teleports. Not gonna be able to find anything, but Camille has so much say over when these fights actually happen with Gnar, and that just means that whenever Gnar goes from Mega to Mini, if he's a bit too far forward, not gonna have a whole lot of tools. And look at this, Immortals investment banking into Viper. They want to make sure he has a small lead in terms of kills over Lorlo right now. They invest even more plates into him, and so suddenly it was only the one kill. Now it's more effectively like 3 or 4 that he was suddenly invested in. He got a lot of gold over.
Yeah, yummy, yummy, yummy. Put them plates in my tummy. Put that hook onto JJ. Headbutt pulverize onto Keith, but just goes right in on the lantern to rejoin Joey. Gotta love the productivity. Thanks.
Put that hook onto Joey. Alright, well, we do have this dragon going over with so much attention being paid to the top side of the map suddenly, where it's, the duo that is there. And once again, continuing his dominance over the neutral objectives. This is the third one he's picked up for this game, because we have to remember they were able to get the Rift Herald earlier. And importantly, a bit surprisingly to me, we are seeing that Anda has a pretty big lead in farm going up over Will. Now, we haven't necessarily been looking at exactly what Will has been doing, but this says to me he's been spending a lot more time looking for ganks. And, my buddy Mark, I'm going to have to give you a shout out right now. Sometimes, if the other person is looking for ganks a lot, you just gotta farm. You just gotta pick it up because your opponent is always expecting to counteract your actions. And hey, if they're not farming, you pick up more gold farming, even if it's slow, if you don't farm at all.
That's the inherent risk within going for ganks. Oh, hook shot from Viper to get onto Soligo. Throws out the Emperor's Divide to get them away. Hey, sometimes you don't need to use an ultimate to try and secure a kill. You just need it for that disengage, something with which Soligo is very comfortable doing.
And we saw how long Viper was actually holding on to the ult. Oh, the death sentence just misses.
The micro movements under the turret, and you gotta respect Joey for trying to make the play, but instead it's Anda that goes in with the flag onto Will, chunks him down a bit, but he has some escape of his own to get back to lane.
And I really like this timing of all these plays coming from Immortals, right? Because as they move towards topside, they take control of this jungle. Hey, Spawn, you're alone here. He has to use the flash in order to keep himself alive. But this is coming right as the Rift Herald is spawning, Gabby. This is right when they are taking control of the top side, pushing out all the members of Dignitas. Rift Herald's going to be spawning right here, and there's no way that Dignitas can contest.
And while Anda didn't secure the kill, it got both the flash and the ultimate from Spawn. So he's a lot more vulnerable if he even tried to step up to any of this, which is why that's exactly what he's not going to do. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, Purdy continues to play aggressively, gets the root onto Azir, but has to just score it back. So just going to keep on going with the poke between the two mid laners as the attention is still paid onto the second Rift Herald. Anda had already secured the first and was able to drop it in that bottom lane to give Viper that extra leg he needed to continue to grow himself. Meanwhile, top though, Joey, a hook onto JJ. It's the 2v2 right now, or the 3v2 rather. See if they try to go for any of this. Still a little bit of a wave for Dignitas to hold on to.
This turret is right on the border of whether or not it will die to a single Herald charge, but we're getting a teleport. Here comes
teleport right on the outside. JJ with a trample, follows the lantern towards the back. Lorlo, Gnar ultimate onto 2, throws down the hail of arrows from Spawn onto the opposite side, but Keith has rotated. Viper also getting his teleport into that back right, but hip shot in, throws down the ultimate. A knock up onto the majority of IMT, but it's Dignitas that have been losing member after member. A failed flash, JJ could not get over the wall, and instead knocked up and down by Immortals.
Hey, remember that thing we were saying where they have a ton of threats on the side of Immortals? Yeah, they weren't able to knock down any of them in that fight. Just like looking at this play coming from Dignitas, it feels really good. Lorlo gets this double ult onto people. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of follow-up. The teleport on the other side means that Spawn has to run. He can't deal with Viper, and Viper is eventually the one that picks it up. But because things are so split, because Dignitas are not the ones in control of this fight, they can't protect their backline. So Lego has to run, and while it's unfortunate that JJ gives them an extra kill, at the end of the day, this was a fight that was always going to go towards Immortals because of how split Dignitas were. They were so cerebral in game 1, but this time it's Immortals who are able to take the fights better.
And where that fight was, if you look at Viper on the Camille from game 1 to game 2, a lot of times when he went into the back line, he would have to sacrifice his own life in the process. Here, able to escape behind the rest of his team, even when he was brought down to a narrow HP, and then Immortals could follow up with a lot more confidence. Joey, though, almost getting collapsed upon here, has Lantern for Keith to come in, a death sentence onto Will, flashes out, but Anda comes down with a Cataclysm, catches 3 within it. Even Spawn throwing out an ultimate of his own, though, to try and return the favor. Will zips on to the back. He's activated that passive, as we love to see Viego do. Pretty isolated. JJ falls down. Oh, the zip in. The Emperor survived the throw back. Soligo making a magnificent play there, but Dignitas, they just take the jungler away. They've still lost 2 in this engage.
What a crazy fight back and forth once again, but it comes up at a crucial time. This fight happens right before the next dragon is going to be spawning. Dragon 3 coming up in 20 seconds, and crucially, with all of these ultimates down, we have to keep track of what is still around. 1, Lorlo still has Gnar, Keith still has his ultimate, and Viper looking for spawn.
He has been going for kill after kill after kill. Look at how easily he blasts down those first hits onto Spawn for the follow-up. But the Gnar ultimate to throw them back results in the shutdown. Lorlo with 1 kill, still going for this in the 1v1. Has the teleport support coming in, but Anda has also arrived to the party. Has the distance to be close. Now has to try to return to the rest of the team. Lorlo, a line of HP still on his bar. Joey coming on forward, lays them back, but has to back off. Keith offering a lot of damage at this point, but just healing himself up with the attack on these minions. Taking some solace under the turret. Joey gets a hook onto Will, but that's a difficult target. They have the Rift Herald here to now draw the attention of Dignitas, as Immortals can focus their own attention onto this Soul Point Dragon.
Yeah, this is big. Once again, we're seeing the small outplays coming through from both sides, but at the end of the day, Immortals, they're a little bit faster to the play. And who's this? This is Pretty looking for a flank right now. Is he going to find anyone? It's JJ.
JJ, does he know what he's running into? Gets locked down with a chain, tries to knock back Pretty, but there's a Viper here to make sure that it's secured. Still a lot to be said with Spawn coming on through. Gets the Chain of Corruption onto Viper, but Anda zips in. Viper does too. Soligo isolated on the opposite side. An attempt at the Cataclysm, but Will, just a few more should do it, resigns to his own fate. And Immortals, another fight out on top. 13-3 on the kill board here, Joshi. They're feeling a lot better about their team play this time around.
Oh, it's so good, right? If you don't need your damage to win the fight, you don't need to be there. You're just a reset for Viego win to happen. They're playing so well, and it's not, you know, the same kind of cerebral, like constant, like, oh, this is the exact fight we need to take. They're just willing to go for fights that they expect should be winning, and every single time they happen, right? They are bringing more members to bear. They got 3 dragons. They're rewarding themselves with a Baron, and with a 7,000 gold lead at this point, they should be very happy with their position. And this is the big part of bringing in dive buddies, Gabby. You don't want to go to the swimming pool alone. You always got to make sure somebody else is there. No diving board is as fun by yourself, and they're able to find multiple people because Pretty, Viper, and Anda are always looking for the same targets. This time it's JJ, and look at how they immediately turn their attention over to Spawn immediately after. They have enough people to actually take them down this time, whereas they were struggling with that in Game 1. Looking great for Immortals. They find 3, they find a Baron. They're firmly in control of this game.
Who needs life vest? Who needs floaties? All that fancy gear when you got friends by your side.
Yeah, that's what they said. Isn't that what the analyst just said? It's like, it's all about the friendship.
Yeah, they're also talking about Keitra saying look it up, and I thought, what happens if you look up the power of friendship? Oh, Viper does not find a friend in Lorlo, though. That's just purely his enemy. Merely on the opposite side, though, JJ does get a headbutt pulverized onto 2, and flashes over the wall. Lorlo attempts to jump in, but isn't able to get there in time. A piercing arrow through it, but doesn't connect with anybody just yet. So it's back to focusing on clearing this Baron-empowered wave. Pretty on the outskirts. Dignitas know where they're coming from. The split of this pressure now, Immortals bringing towards the mid lane as well.
Ooh, Brady getting caught a little bit, but is able to go right on back. And look at the control they have. Even though we've seen a couple wards from Dignitas, they are all removed by the control wards. And Lorlo, gotta be super careful, right? Remember, Viper is currently not here. He just healed up, has a stopwatch, so he can make a couple extra plays. But Keith, with the extra safety provided by Joey, picks up the second turret in the mid lane. They have total control of this because all of their divers can just come over from a wall, and Dignitas don't really have any tools to try and deal with it.
IMT with so much strength, a lot of them on their second item power spike. They've got this Baron empowerment going for them. Dignitas have so much difficulty holding even from directly under their turret and just have to give up that mid lane one. Lorlo does get locked down though. Pretty's got some mighty burst, flashes, stasis in response. Will is here for some additional assistance as the Azir turret does fall. But most of the attention is still over towards that top side. Soligo coming in with the Emperor's Divide, throws down the enemy top laner under the turret, and it's the official shutdown onto Viper. Meanwhile, in the top lane, Anda narrowly escaping some lockdown, returning to the rest of his team. Pretty brought down low. Has the copy available to him, but in the end, Will does find his target. Keith doing his best to try and create some of this distance and poke them down. Wanting to go for the lantern, but the grab is good from Dignitas. Lorlo still alive here, and it's JJ that ends up falling. Keith gets the double kill. A reversal of the positioning of these two teams right now. Soligo, Will, and Lorlo trying to usher them towards their lane, but in the tri-bush is where IMT had the vision until Dignitas went and threw down a control ward of their own, so they can't get caught off by any potential ambushing. Have most of these entrances lit up for themselves to secure that doesn't happen.
Wow, I love it. The only way out is forward, and Keith is willing to go for the fight, but we are seeing some of the weaknesses of Immortal Academy's actual composition, right? We said that they were going to struggle to actually take some of these structures because they don't have any poke, they don't have any wave clear, they don't have a whole lot of range. They're only really playing with Keith to actually hit these structures a lot of the time, and that's just giving opportunities for Soligo to make some of these plays. But it's also coming up, they get this massive influx of gold. When they got the Baron, they were up 7k. Now they're up closer to 9. They have these opportunities to look for this Ocean Soul. If they're able to pick that up, dives become so much easier because of the extra health they're playing with. And now, Dignitas have to go for a fight, but they also need to know that Pretty's here on the flank.
Joey, a hook just onto the enemy support. throwing out his root. So this is indeed a very important fight for both sides, as you noted. Immortals wanting to go for the soul, Dignitas wanting to do everything they can to prevent that Viper. He goes in, catches onto Soligo, who goes into stasis, but there's the response. Viper ends up falling. The shuffle away with the Emperor's Divide. Soligo already marked down low, pretty on the outskirts of the entirety of this fight, but Dig, they aren't necessarily in the healthiest place for themselves. Even some fruit being eaten by Soligo here, pretty a little at odds with Lorlo, but most of Dignitas have been shuffled into the enemy's jungle territory. Teleport coming in for that additional level of support. Joey seeing if he can find a good hook for maybe another re-engage here. Keith sidestepping the Q from spawn. They're just throwing out all the poke that they can to really draw out the remaining members of Immortals here. Over the wall, and it goes. Hook onto Lorlo. Oh no, JJ has fallen. Immortals can try to take advantage of this, but Joey is already low himself. A TP now in response from the red side. Good stuns. Lorlo, he's having to escape. Viper all the way slinging into the back, throws down the Hextech ultimatum onto spawn to secure it, and that is the ace. Immortals get the soul, they get the fight, and they'll be getting the turret next.
The patience from Immortals was so insane. Watching them wait it out, they knew they just needed to buy time. As long as Dignitas is not hitting the dragon, Immortals is winning. They're able to get all these waves pushed in at the same time. They wait for the Narbar to disappear so he doesn't have access to any of these big tools during the fight. They wait for Viper to come back up so that he can teleport back in. And Immortals, because they do all these steps correctly, are rewarded with the Ocean Soul. They're rewarded with the mid lane inhibitor, and they're going to be starting the Baron. But look, they're not doing anything. They're just waiting around the wings because they know Dignitas isn't forcing the issue. This dragon isn't going low whatsoever. And Keith almost accidentally killing JJ with the flamethrower because he was actually hitting Lorlo in that whole thing. And now, at this point, there is no fight left for Dignitas to try and take. They don't have ultimates, they don't have HP, and they are surrounded on all sides. So while they do get the one kill onto the support at the very end, it's all Immortals all the time. And now, the only thing that they got to try and do is try and close the game.
And Keith is feeling pretty good right now on that fellow. So you can see how much poke he could do just from that bush. 3-item spike for himself. Everyone on IMT really making use of those earlier spikes they were able to achieve. So now Dignitas trying their best to keep together as a unit, throw down the Azir turret just to create some of that pressure there and secure some more vision around this Baron. They've got it pretty lit up right now, but it would be a difficult one to take.
And remember, Immortals doesn't necessarily need to go for this Baron, right? They have control of the mid lane. They can force Dignitas to back because Dignitas don't do it quick enough. And now, Dignitas are still sticking around here, but their super minions pushing mid.
They want to go for it. JJ ushers himself on in onto Joey. There's the Cataclysm as well as the Emperor's Divide, but over on the outskirts, Viper using his ultimate to isolate. Dig has already lost 2 members, and oh no, even with a 3-man stun from Lorlo here in the back, by the time he's able to do anything else about it, the rest of the team is dead. Immortals, what a match from them thus far. Joshi, they have been showing out.
The threat overload comes through. Who do you hit when you have so many people on top of your backline all at the same time? The answer is apparently nobody. They all remain full HP. Immortals is able to pick it up, and now they're going to be tying us up in this series, Gabby, 1-1.
1-1 as 1 and 2 towers fall. Immortals getting the last chunks onto this Nexus, making sure that their names ring out strong, even as Spawn spawns himself. He cannot grab this back for Dignitas. Immortals taking game number 2. What a series so far. We'll continue to break it down after the break.